Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to uLaw's webinar on the court forms automation, and we're going to touch a little bit upon the document generation features that you could also use out of the uLawPractice platform. I kindly request you to mute your phone lines and dial into the phone numbers provided in the chat window. Now, today's session is not accredited for any CPD credits. It's going to be a session where I am able to demonstrate one of the features of the uLaw project, which is the ability to provide court forms for certain silos of practice in the province of Ontario, where we automate the form filling of court forms such as small claim court forms, family law court forms, LATB court forms. And we're going to walk you through the fundamentals of how you accomplish it, what are the core principles that you have to keep in mind to generate these automated court forms, and at the end of the session, really have an interactive way of getting feedback from the audience about their experience with court forms, what areas of practice they typically focus on, and a bit of Q&A. So once again, I welcome everyone who's joined us today. Court forms automation is the key aspect of today's webinar, not accredited for CPD credits, but hope you stick around and have some fun as we go through this webinar, okay? Like every other uLaw webinar, today's webinar has a very specific agenda. Again, talks about how can the court forms automation feature of the uLawPractice platform add value to your legal practice. So fundamentally, it's about time saving. If time is money, if we can save you time in reducing the amount of manual effort that a legal practitioner goes through filling out these court forms, our goal is to be able to provide a tool that can reduce that manual effort, automate as much as possible so that you can then take that saved time and focus it on things that can make you money, more productive things, right? How can it streamline the important aspects of your business? How do you ensure the content, the data within those forms are prudent? How do you ensure that there are no mistakes, there's no manual errors? And how do you also ensure that anybody in your law firm can adhere to the same process and, I would say, discipline of generating these documents as and when they are required? We'll talk about the concept of additional parties. It's a very key prerequisite within uLawPractice to be able to associate the contacts that you save within the uLaw contact database and be able to associate them as parties within a matter, okay? And we'll also take examples of other documents along the way within a matter, as well as certain financial documents that are important both jurisdictionally as well as per the Law Society's guidelines, such as retainer letters, client ID verification, and how associating parties can also reflect not just in court forms, but also in these other documents that are client-facing that you may have to produce as part of your legal file process. Okay? As I said, this is the slide share that I'm going to be sharing today is very limited. The slide share is truly to set the context of the amount of demonstration that I could actually show you after the slide share in how you go about utilizing contacts, additional parties to generate automated court forms and other documentation that are client-facing. Okay? So when you look at some of the common court forms automation areas in uLaw, we've taken some of the most commonly used, such as small claims, landlord and tenant, POA, Highway Traffic Act, that is, family law, criminal, accident benefits, tribunal, WSIB. Okay. We also have a really fun video that really shows you a comparison of the automated form filling versus the manual way. It's on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to go check it out. It shows how within the same 2 minutes or 3 minutes where you actually go about entering a court form in a manual process, or I think 3 to 4 minutes, we're able to actually fill out close to about 5 or 6 different forms. Okay? Now keep in mind these court forms specifically are in the province of Ontario. It's certainly in our roadmap, and we're already starting to build court forms that are prevalent in the provinces of Alberta, British Columbia, and then we're going to move to the Atlantic provinces. But today we focus on the court forms automation feature for areas of practice and court forms in the province of Ontario only. Okay. And within that, if you notice, different court forms are of different formats. So if you typically don't have this feature, what you're required to do is actually visit the individual websites that carry these court forms. So you go into a small claims website for Ontario, download the court form that is specific, whether it's a plaintiff's claim or a defendant's claim. You download the form, you either print it out and then handwrite it, or you can actually type it in because the small claims is typically a Word document. But if you look at the landlord and tenant board, then that's a PDF. It's a totally different landscape of how information is entered. So again, you could either print this, handwrite it, or type it again. But the amount of times that our paralegals and lawyer clients spend is not that first time. It's really the second or third time that if they make a mistake in filling these court forms that they have to spend in either retyping or rewriting the entire form itself, right? Now this is where we were able to utilize the tool set that we already have, the fundamental framework that uLaw has of associating contacts to a matter, and we called it the additional parties as it's in the legal lingo. And what was originally used to generate the retainer letters and other forms of documentation outside of court form, we made it available through this nice feature functionality to be able to automate exactly in the same position as these documents require them to be, where mistakes, even if you make them, can be easily corrected in one single place, and then you don't have to worry about it at all because the uLaw would then take care of correcting those mistakes and making the most recent information available in these court forms when you generate it. Okay? Small claims, landlord and tenant, as I said, we have family, criminal, accident benefits, tribunal, and different court forms have different formats, PDF and Word documents. Now, let's pause for a moment and really think about additional parties and how this is an important concept to keep in mind, because this is truly the aspect of how you build a relationship between contacts in the context of a file or a matter. Okay? The uLaw has a very robust contact management, or a mini CRM, if you will, a contact management database on the cloud. Okay, so we allow and empower our clients to store and save any contact information, name and address, phone number, email addresses, so you can really expand on the amount of information that you save regarding a specific contact. And I clearly say that it's a contact because we're not a database that just allows for clients. So you're not just saving client information into uLaw. Of course, that's a very important component of the contact database. So a client is a type of contact, but there could be, right, other types of contacts that you come across in your legal life. So if you're dealing with a plaintiff situation, for example, if your client is the plaintiff, now obviously there are other parties and they are all contact information that's required to be saved and printed in these court forms. So in uLaw, a defendant is also a contact or an opposing party. The opposing party defendant's legal representative is also a contact that you can save. If there's this one legal professional that you always go head against, you can save his or her information into uLaw so that you can repurpose it. How you repurpose is building a relationship within a file. So you create the matter, you create the file, and now start to associate a relationship. And additional parties is how you build that relationship within a file. Okay? So again, I know there's a lot of English, a lot of talking, but I'm going to certainly demonstrate this as a simple demonstration within the uLaw product so that you can appreciate this better. But keep in mind some examples of additional parties. A good example is as simple as attention. So if there's, let's say, you work with a corporate company, right? Whether it could be for employment law, or this could be for intellectual property law, or let's say for any instance you're working with a company, they may actually ask you to send all the invoices, all correspondences to a specific individual, right? Send it to attention Peter, right? So you can save that information in uLaw as a contact, and within the file that you've created for that company, you can add Peter as attention being his relationship within that file. So what happens is uLaw then understands that any time a document needs to be sent out, it needs to be attention to Peter. In the case of a family law, you obviously have the applicant-respondent relationships. You have, in the case of divorce matters, you may have child representative also as parties involved in that file, right? In the case of a small claims matter, you obviously have the plaintiff-defendant situation in the types of parties, again, in that file. For accident benefits, you obviously have other parties involved. It's not just the person who met with the accident. It's not the two parties that may have met with the accident. It's also any health practitioner that you're looking, a police officer that was in this at the time, insurance company involved. So these are all pieces of information that different court forms in Ontario request you to fill out. Now, if you can provide that one time in uLaw, what we give you is the ability to automate the filling of that court form. Another common example, and I'll leave you with this before we jump into the demo, is that of the joint retainer. So sometimes if it's as simple as a will, or if it's as simple as a real estate matter, you may actually have a joint retainer situation. So yourself and your spouse or someone else, your friend, maybe together on a retainer with that legal professional. So you as the legal professional can add multiple contacts as parties involved, and their relationship being that of a joint retainer. So when a retainer letter is made out, it's made in all their names instead of just a single name. All right, so before we get into this, I'm going to quickly jump ship and actually walk you through the demo, and I'm going to come back to this presentation slide to get a bit of an interactive game going with the audience after my demonstration. Okay, so let me shift gears into demo mode. Okay, so here I'm logged into a fictitious legal professional, Roger Moore. Okay, so this is uLawPractice, and this is the web-based, encrypted, secure instance of a legal professional using the uLawPractice product. Okay, I always use the Roger Moore example for all my demonstrations. And for those who have joined us for the first time, you're going to see more of Roger Moore as we move through these demonstrations. So you have the concept of contacts within uLaw. Okay, so this is where you're going to store your client information, of course, but you could also use this to store other types of contacts that you come across in your legal life. Okay, so when you say add new contact, one of the first steps. So let's start with a client. Let's start with a simple small claims, for simplicity, start with that, and then I can show you examples of other. I've already set up a contact with many different forms set up, so I'm going to walk you through that. Let's start with a client. Don't want to do a ghost client, so I'll say discard changes. So I'm going to say add new contact, and I'll add that to my clients group. And let's say Mr. Barry Richard. Very important piece of information. Again, keep in mind this is a simple client intake form. I'm just going to say client referral in my notes. Let me say referred by John. Important that you have a correspondence address. In some cases you may not, but if you do have, it's important that you put it in. In uLaw, the cool thing is that you can just start off with whatever information you have, save it, right? So let's say you don't have the postal code or the phone number, you can basically save this information of Mr. Barry Richard, and then let's say Mr. Barry Richard provides you that information at a later time. You can always search up that contact, edit that contact, and continue to save the information as you move along. Okay, so in a minute, you're going to see this particular screen refresh and bring up a capital B with Barry Richard. Again, it's a configurable option where this could be sorted based on either first name or last name. In this case, I've set it up to be sorted with a first name. Okay, so bear with me, as Join Me sometimes takes a little bit of time to refresh. There you go. So let's say you have a little bit more information about Barry Richard. You can go about just clicking Edit. Just search for Barry or search for Richard right within our search window that you see here. And there you have Barry Richard. Choose to contact, click Edit, and continue to add. Now in uLaw, we do ask for, and this is a very important, I would say, prerequisite, we do ask whether it's a home address or a work address, we do ask you to mark one of them as a mailing or a correspondence address. And this address is what's used for both invoice purposes, but most importantly, this is the address information that is filled out in a court form. Okay, so very important prerequisite right here is being able to mark a specific address information as a mailing address. You can always click on this Add button here and continue to add addresses as you feel fit. Okay, so this could be the home address, and maybe that's the mailing address, or not, right? So you can. There's only one that can be a mailing address. So let's leave it at that. You can add a phone number, email, whatever you can to expand on the information about that particular client. Let me go ahead and click the Save button, and this information is again stored in a very secure manner for your specific legal firm's purpose in your database in the cloud. So you can access it from your phone, wherever you have internet. So now you have Barry Richard. Let's assume that Barry is the plaintiff, and given today's condition in Ontario, let's assume that it's a slip and fall in front of their house at 908 Queen Street. And let's have the defendant, right? So this is the plaintiff. Maybe the defendant is someone, obviously it's another contact. And this is where you can use the contact database to store that information as well. Okay? So to store that, you're just going to say Add New Contact. Now, the opposing party is obviously not your client. You only have Barry as your client. But you can add that person and then say Defendants if you have that information at that time. And let's say that this was Mr. Thomas Edison. You could actually add a source of contact if you like, but that's more relevant for a client, right? Very, very important that you add the address information. Let's make this mailing address. We've got Mr. Thomas Edison, who's, let's say, the neighbor in this matter, who's the defendant. who is fighting against Barry Richard, who is your client and the plaintiff with regards to a legal file that you have to create. Okay? So far we've added Barry Richard, who's your client, assuming that Roger Moore is the legal professional here, Barry Richard being the plaintiff, but also the client. We've also added the opposing party, the defendant, Mr. Thomas Edison. Now let's assume Thomas Edison actually has a legal professional who works for him. Now let's add that information too. So uLaw allows you to add that information as well. And we have this group called representatives just for that grouping. You can click that and you can say this is Miss Cindy Crawford. Okay, provide the address of her firm. Mark that as the mailing address. Phone number, email, etc. So for a very simple small claim matter where there's just one defendant and a defendant's legal professional that's working for that individual, we've now added 3 contacts: your client's information, the defendant's information, the defendant's legal representative. Okay? So the contacts have been saved. The name and address has been saved, so you don't have to deal with that anymore. Now you move on to obviously creating a legal file or a matter, but that's done specific to your client. Okay? So let's search up Barry Richard, and that's your client. Once again, search up Barry Richard, or you can actually go to our dashboard, which has recently modified contacts, and bring it up. But I actually like our simple search. I'm just going to type in Richard. And there is Barry. I'm going to go ahead and create a file or a matter for Barry, who's my client. And I click on the Matter button. This opens up a brand new matter because I've never created a file for Barry before. And 2 pieces of information that we ask you for to just get started is a title. So this could be Barry versus Thomas. Slip and fall. And an area of practice. So this is not a POA matter. This is in fact a small claims matter. Because this allows uLawPractice to provide the legal professional Roger Moore. It enables us to give Roger Moore more information, very pertinent information about the areas of practice in which he's actually making revenue. Fantastic. So I've actually provided basic information, Barry versus Thomas, small claims. Okay. So I can now do a typical docket disbursement. I could add a retainer if that's my situation, right? So I'm really looking to start working on this file. But specific, so I can quickly show you how that's done. If there's a invoice or a retainer involved, you could go ahead and add information. Go into your trust, or you can go to disbursements retainer and basically say new retainer. And let's say today we got in a $500, $565 retainer, and they give you a check, deposit it into your trust account, give them a receipt. As simple as that. So this is how you would go about accepting a retainer and just entering all the information that's relevant to this particular file. And we spoke about certain documents beyond the court forms that can be generated. So let's look at that real quick and then jump into the court forms automation. So right for this file under document generation, if you go into compliance, here are a bunch of documents that you can right away generate that gives you the Law Society compliance comfort factor. Okay, so client intake form, generate it. client ID verification. You can generate that. And what we've done is we've taken bits and pieces of information that you've already provided us, right? We know, this particular client intake form would like for you to articulate right from the date to how did this client get to know about you. So that's a client referral. If any photo ID was provided, you can then say you can add to this. But at least we started you off with some basic information that you didn't have to retype, right? So you've got the client's name, their mailing address, and now obviously you can expand on this by providing, do you have a court proceeding? Obviously we don't know all this information, and so on and so forth. You can do a conflict screening document. You can even do a retainer letter. And what we do is if you do this in an MS Word, we also take and then tell us that you received the 565 retainer. We could do a simple flat rate matter. The retainer letter template that is already set for a flat rate template utilizes all of the information that you already provided us. If you look at that, it's a retainer letter for the Barry versus Thomas slip and fall. It's automated the input of the file number. It's taken your piece of information that we already know, right? So we already have Roger Moore's information right under the settings details to 123 Main Street. That's exactly what we've picked up here, right? Kingston, Ontario. Dated today. And you've got obviously the plaintiff client, Mr. Barry Richards, his correspondence address, including his postal code, file name, file number. And this is where we give you the opportunity to edit this because it's a Word document and tweak it as you feel fit. Okay, so you've got a flat rate fee of 565. We acknowledge the receipt of 565 retainer. Yeah. And you sign this, customer signs it, everyone's happy. In fact, you can even link it to any credit card payments. If you send this via email to them, for them to sign it, they can even pay you right through this integration. That's how powerful these documents are, and the integration and the, I would say, data filling within documents. Okay, so again, hopefully you get the idea of how we accomplish the filling of these forms that are relevant, that are templatized, that are meaningful to your legal office. Okay, so you have other documents, authorization letter, client ID verification. So before you get to move forward, you probably want to get before you get started. So there's a quick question: how do we modify the retainer with our letterhead? Great question. So the first step for you to get your own letterhead into uLaw, the quick answer is yes, you are able to put your letterhead in the documents. And this first step is to really personalize, under help, personalize the logo. Okay? And in fact, we do a free service at uLaw. If you send us to support@uLawPractice.com, we actually tweak the letterhead that you currently have so that it fits well within our templates and documents, and we resend you that resized image, which you can upload under banner. Okay, we call it banner. It's otherwise called letterhead. Okay, and then you would start to see your letterhead show up on top of documents. Okay. So here's another example. So these documents, these are compliance documents. So these are not great examples where we can show you a letterhead, but any client-facing documents, of course, retainer letters, other types of letters, you would have your retainer invoices, you would have your letterhead right on top. Okay. So this is a verification identity. You could basically say I got his driver's license. That's how I verified that this is truly Barry Richard. All right. So hopefully that I was able to draw a picture or give you a broader brush of how we utilize information that you've already provided into documents that are obviously necessary for you to generate. Another component or set of documents that are important for you to generate are, of course, the court forms. Yeah. Now, different legal professionals spend different times of time, depending on the areas of practice that you spend. Some of our legal clients spend, a lot of small claims matter, a lot of court forms that need to fill out. And for them, this is a great tool because it automates it. We spoke about additional parties. Now, within this file, you have this tab called Additional Parties. Currently, no parties have been listed or associated. You see the option of adding a relationship or adding a party so that you can start to build that relationship. So you click on Add Party, and we bring about the Additional Parties Association screen, and we ask you, all right, based on our understanding of the legal landscape, here are some examples alphabetically arranged of types of parties that may be involved or relationships that may exist in a file between contacts. So obviously the first relationship we want to establish is that of a defendant. So you choose defendant. Now let's choose the defendant's contact information that we had already stored. And if you remember, we had stored Mr. Thomas Edison as that contact. You can use the drop-in window and just type in TH. Okay. And choose this way. But this is, a really old school way. I really like that you can choose it from here. If you obviously don't know who that is, you can go to or drop down. So here's Mr. Thomas Edison. So now this is how you associate this contact that we already previously stored as this particular party in this particular file, and you hit save. And you're going to notice it's going to say loading contacts and matters. Anytime you see this message, it means uLaw is working behind the scene. Once it disappears, you have full control over it, continuing to edit it. Okay. Now you see Thomas Edison has been built, I would say, brought into this file as a relationship that of a defendant to this particular file. But Thomas Edison may be a totally different relationship in a totally different file. But in this file, he is the defendant fighting against your plaintiff, Mr. Barry. This is also equally important for conflict screening purposes. Okay? So if you come across another Thomas Edison who's looking to retain you, you need to know that you have dealt with a Thomas Edison in the past as a defendant in a totally different file for one Mr. Barry Richards. So not only is the association of parties important from court forms, in a very subtle way, uLaw empowers you to utilize that same information for conflict screening purposes as well. Now let's add another party, and this time we'll associate the representative of the opponent. So that's the legal lingo for the opposing legal counsel. This was, if you remember, this was Mrs. Cindy Crawford. So you're basically going to choose Cindy Crawford and hit save. So now you've associated a contact to this file as a party through additional parties. And you've got the representative of the opponent. You've got two different parties involved in this matter. Now let's cut to the chase and actually go into a cool court form automation. So all documents in uLaw to generate are under document generation, including an invoice, statement of activity, bill of costs. But if you come right at the bottom, you have forms. Okay, let me show you real quick. Here are all the different court forms that we have so far automated as much as information we know to give you that much level of automation. So I'll choose small claims because that's the type of file that this is. And here are all the court forms that you should typically expect for small claims, right? From additional parties 1A to claim Schedule A or notice of termination of garnishment. Now, How do we accomplish this? We have gone to the court site, the court form website, templatized each of those forms that the individual jurisdiction, in this case Ontario, has templatized. So they obviously need certain information in a certain template. We have templatized it, and it's an intellectual property of our tool. It's patent pending, but we're working through that process. It's a pretty cool tool that allows us to templatize that form and then obviously bring in the data where relevant. Okay? And if these forms change, we typically ask for about a 2-week window to update our system with any updates that have been brought up. Sometimes certain court forms are a little more challenging, and sometimes we do request a little bit of leeway there. But traditionally, it's about a 2 to 3 week window where we're updating this on a constant basis. You don't have to worry about it. You can be assured that it is the most recent court form that we deal with. Now, for the purposes of today's demo, let me take a plaintiff's claim. Let's assume I, Roger Moore, representing Barry, are filing a plaintiff's claim court form. And now I can choose the court form. So maybe I'm from Kingston, or no, this was in Toronto. So I could just say the 47 Shepherd. But we already have the different addresses of the different court forms. You can choose that. Now, if there was already a claim number or a court file number, you can put that in. You can either put it in here or you can put it into the file itself and we'll automatically capture that. The date, and all you do is hit the download button. Now, what's happening is uLaw is crunching the associations of parties. It's also looking at the template that you've chosen, which is the plaintiff's claim form. And there are less than 20 seconds. It's associated the data, and there you go. You have a plaintiff's claim form from the province of Ontario with the exact template that's outlined on your website, with the small claim court's address that you chose, with the claim number data filled out in the exact same position as it's required. And here comes for the fun aspect of it, where we've actually taken Barry Richards' first name, last name, automatically filled it in. We know that you've already provided us Barry's mailing address, and hence that information is already pre-populated. But it's not written in stone. This is a Word document, a very native Word document, which you can update. So I just updated it. If I thought ON was not important, Ontario is more important, I can overwrite that document to make it complete. Now, you obviously come to know that Barry Richard is otherwise known as Bear. Now, you don't want to put that in that particular time, or you made a mistake. It was not Barry Richard, it's Barry Richard, right? You're not going to change this. So assume you didn't have this feature, or if you didn't have an automated way of doing this, you're going to download that form. If you've handwritten it, you probably have to retype it, scratch it, type it again. And that's just for one field. Okay? The phone number changes, everything changes. We'll talk about how that information gets quickly updated. We've also got the representative, that is you, or in this case, I, as Roger Moore, my information. Now I have a defendant number 1. Now, if I had additional defendants, if there were multiple individuals involved, I could have defendant 1, defendant 2, and I can then have individual legal representation, if prudent, for each of those candidates. But in this case, if there was just one defendant and one representative of the opponent, and hence you've got Thomas Edison, living at 71 King Street, Cindy Crawford, with the Avion Street address. Okay? You come further, you've got the date, and that's it. All you needed to fill out was how much is the principal amount claimed. Okay? Now, a little word tip is if you wanted to highlight this or cross this, you just double-click that little checkbox, say that it's checked, and make that 10 points. And it would check it exactly as if you were to check it. Okay? Okay, so we spoke about, so here's the document that we've signed up, automatically provided that information. Now, let's say a piece of information changed. One thing is you can actually change it in the Word document, but more importantly, where it needs to be changed is in the contact itself. So if this was really not Barry Richard, or if some other information was important, you can actually edit that information right here. You can put the nickname as Bear. You can put Barry. Really, I'm just faking this. I'm assuming that that's the new information. And with that information saved, all the components or data points where that information is required to be filled out changes as well. Okay, so you don't have to deal with having to change it in each of those places. Now, if I go about generating that same court form with that new saved information, obviously the title, you would have to change it because you typed it in, right? And that would change the title of that particular matter as well. Now let's go ahead and generate that court form. Let me do another thing. Let me go and put the court file number, and I'll call that 11111. I'm going to hit that, saving matter. Once it disappears, then I have full control. Forms, small claims, and you can see how the court file number is automatically populated. I'll say Toronto or 7 Shepherd Avenue East. I'm actually going to do a plaintiff's claim and download. Obviously, this seems trivial. It obviously comes across very trivial, but in a practical, pragmatic way, this is going to help you appreciate how changes can be accommodated one time and the documents change automatically. Okay, so you've got the Bear, AKA name, you've changed the Barry first name, and now it's up to date. That one change allowed you to change it across all documents. Okay, so if I go generate the same retainer letter, let me just do a simple one. This has the latest information, and you don't have to type this again. Okay, again, it's not rocket science, but it's certainly a very pragmatic time saver. Let me put it that way. Okay, so very important prerequisite for the whole court forms automation to happen, that you save all the information of the contact of people that you already know, that you're dealing with in that file, as and when you know them, of course. And if you store them in our contacts database, by creating a file or a matter for a specific client, you can start to use the additional parties to build that relationship between the contacts and the file, so that that piece of information gets utilized when you generate these court forms. Okay? Now, I had previously stored one Mr. Jonathan form just to give you a sample of the different types of forms that we deal with. Now, we did small claims, so let me do a family matter between Jonathan and Emma. Now, you can see that there are totally different types of parties. You've got Emma Brown, who's the respondent, and this is a family matter. You've got Emma's representative, Stefan, You got another respondent, Hudson Brown. Now, Hudson has a different representative, Roger Moore, and then you got a joint retainer, obviously, with Emma Brown. Okay? Now, if I go ahead and, let's see, I generate a family court form. And let me say the Kingston. Oh, yeah, just say Wellington Street, sure. This is a totally different template that the family law court form requires you to fill out. That's the court file number, pre-populated, the address of the courthouse. It's got the applicant, Mr. Jonathan Form, all his information. You got the lawyer who's representing him, Mr. Roger Moore. Now you've got a couple of respondents. You've got Emma Brown and you've got Hudson Brown. Okay? You've also got their individual representatives. You've got Stefan representing Emma. You've got Roger Moore representing Hudson. Okay? We even fill out the applicant's age. So if you give us their birth date, which is a important component of a contact. So if you go into a specific contact, let me just quickly show you that. Let's edit. And if you go into here, you have the birth date. So we use the birthday to come up with the age. Right, so we've got 42 years. Obviously, he was born 1976. Information, you've got the respondent's age. Okay? Of course, we don't do any numbers. We don't do calculation of money. You would probably end up using a divorce mate. But if it's a simpler divorce, we've seen legal clients use the uLaw's court form filling, where they can actually do the math themselves. It's rather straightforward, if you will, where they can just fill this information in. You can just say it's a divorce. Same thing, checked. Exactly 10 points. Okay. Again, we try and pre-populate as much as we know, as much as piece of information we know that's relevant to be filled in this form. That was an example of a court form for a family matter. Let me get out of here. All right, what else is a good example? Let's do a landlord and tenant. One of the most commonly used feature of, or area of practice where a lot of our clients use it is the landlord and tenant. So let's say rent eviction, where obviously Roger Moore is representing the landlord in this case, right? So the tenant is Emma Brown. Again, we've got similar actors. And Emma's legal representative is Stefan Edberg, right? So let's go in and do forms. And this time, instead of small claims or family, I'm going to do LATB. And right away, the first one is application to evict a tenant for non-payment. And let me download that court form. The interesting aspect is, as you notice, this court form for a landlord and tenant is PDF. So uLaw's engine appreciates that, knows that. Again, you can say, did you give the notice? You can say, yeah. Are you applying for the termination? Is the tenant still in possession? You can say, yes, sir, he is. So it becomes a very interactive document. This is all a piece of information. And there you go. You got the rental unit covered, 78 Queen Street, Brampton, postal code. You can see totally different landscape, different type of formatting, and we've done well to fit it into that. You've got Jonathan Form, first name, last name, his address in Ottawa, phone numbers, Jonathan's email address. We even go to the extent of understanding underscores. Okay? You've got the tenant's information, Emma Brown. The particular mailing address is, of course, the same address as the address of the rentable unit. That was right on the top. Okay. Got Emma's email address. And all this comes from the contact information and the details that there is in that document, in the contact data. You can type in the rent owing, any application fee, and of course you've got the legal professional Roger Moore, who's representing the plaintiff, the landlord. Okay? I've got another instance where I'm doing an ATB, tenant 3. In this case, I'm representing the tenant, and I believe this one would be could be application but tenant right, tenant application for a rebate, could be anything, right? What else do I have? You could do POA, so speeding 90 at a 60 zone. Typically in a POA, there really isn't a concept of an additional party. You can basically go ahead and do a POA. I've seen a lot of our clients use it for the notice of intention. Okay, you can do the same. Here's that document for the tenant, where the roles are just reversed, of course, right? Landlord, same concept. Notice of intention to appear, some basic information. We also do, as I said, criminal. Not sure if there's one. Yeah, there you go. A federal criminal matter, DUI. You can see there's an applicant, co-accused, representative of the opponent. New criminal form. Also in a PDF document. Different template, of course. And it fills out as much as information as we know. Okay? All right, so with just another 5 more minutes, I mean, that's the key aspect of today's demonstration, is how to repurpose contact information associated to a matter so that you can now start to generate documents that are relevant to your legal life cycle, but more importantly, deal with court forms across these various silos of practice in Ontario that we allow you to do automated court forms. Okay? That's a big part of what I wanted to demonstrate today, with maybe another 5 minutes left. What we've started to do from last week is kind of do this little more contacts within a single group. I believe you can export. So basically, the question is, can I export all my clients? Of course, yes. You can go into our contacts. And if you go into export, you see this button that says export. You can choose a specific group. And it's a Google CSV or an Excel sheet, if you will. That's how you can do that. All right, so let's go back to our slide, and this is where I would request you to participate in this new way of interacting with our audience. Okay, so I kindly request you to either use your phone. It's pretty cool if you use the phone, or if you can go on the website browser and hit menti.com. This is a app that we use today to be able to interactly get feedback and make this as a very interactive session. So if I can kindly request the audience today to open up your phones, go to the web browser on your iPad, whatever, and go to menti.com. Okay. And I've already played it. So if you go to menti.com, type in the code 897843. So just go to your web browser, hit menti.com, and right at the top you would see where it says enter the code. Please enter the code and submit. Type in 897843. Okay? And when you enter that, you're going to be prompted with a question. It's going to say, where do you associate uLaw's contacts within a matter? And I would appreciate if you could, having gone through the session, hopefully I've done well to be able to give you the insight to answer this question. Where do you associate uLaw's contacts within a matter? And if you see the option, it's matter event, rate, additional parties, trust, general documents. So I appreciate if you could go ahead and submit the answer, and I will give it 30 seconds before I close the vote on this particular question. So please feel free to go to menti.com, put in the code 897843, and please answer the question. Okay, we've got some answers in. That's fantastic. And hopefully you like it. This is, again, a way to get everyone involved and get them to be part of this webinar, right? We're hoping that you like this, and we could also bring this upon CPDs where a bit of a learning curve or a learning path can be introduced as part of that CPD. So don't feel shy. Please open up those phones, those browsers, and give your answers in. And if you're done, let me go ahead. And it is anonymous, so we don't know who's giving this information, so don't worry about that. Interesting. So about 13% have said it's matter event. Some of them have said rate. But of course, the right answer, I'll show the correct answer, is additional parties. So we looked at how within a matter, it is the additional parties is the tab that's used to associate the contact to this file. Okay, so the question was, where do you associate uLaw's contacts within a matter? And the answer is additional parties. All right, so I'm going to open up for the next question. It's going to say the presenter has changed the slide. So the next question is, what practice areas do you use the court form automation feature the most? Or what practice areas will you use the court feature the most? So it's really getting a survey of the different areas of practice where you as the audience today hope to use this feature, if at all useful. So is it in family law? So do you do more family law? Is it small claims, the POA, HDA, accident benefits, LATB, criminal law? These are some examples. So go ahead and please use that to submit your answers. And we'll wait for just a couple more of our audience members to chime in. The last time I got 8 answers, so I'm hoping I get more. Okay. So we've got a good spread of folks from various silos. There's about 21% family, and about 21% as we get others sending their information, right? We've got 29% LATB, which is the highest so far, and none for criminal. Fantastic. And then we go into the third question. And we're very proud to share this with our audience today. You are our clients. You are the audience that we speak to every week. We're very thankful and grateful for the exposure we as a company have got over these 9 years. But recently we were awarded, we were nominated and awarded for multiple awards. We were very proud to be nominated as a nominee at the Edison Awards for Legal Tech. We were a winner in the Canadian Lawyer magazine for practice management legal accounting software. And we actually won, in fact, we won 3 awards there, and we won 5 awards in the in-house Reader's Choice. All right, so if you've answered all these questions, perfect. So you've learned, obviously, about court forms, some cost savings, efficiencies, additional parties, and some thank yous. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And with that, hopefully we've done well to do something different with this webinar. I'm going to go back to my original screen. The intent of today's webinar was to talk about court forms automation. We looked at how you used contacts and associate that to a client, open a file, and bring those different contacts as parties within that file and be able to generate documents, retainer letters, statement of activities, even invoices, but also more importantly generate court forms in the province of Ontario for various silos of practice. Specifically, we looked at small claims, we looked at landlord and tenant, and we also looked at a family law matter with the POA as well. Okay? We once again are a growing legal accounting, practice management, and business accounting software purpose-built for legal professionals in Canada and Canada only. And for those who don't know who we are, we kindly encourage you to visit our website. We offer a 30-day trial, no obligation, no credit card, none of that, to explore and really experience the uLaw product and see if it's a great fit for you and your firm. Once again, to everyone who's joined us today, thank you very much for being part of this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar next Friday. Thank you, and have yourself a fantastic weekend ahead.